What would happen if I told you that there is a root with anti-inflammatory power, similar to turmeric yet far superior when it comes to clearing the lungs and defeating respiratory infections areas where turmeric often falls short? A plant that survives freezing winters where turmeric dies almost instantly. A mature plant can produce many pounds of medicinal root each year, while turmeric in cold climates yields only minimal harvests. And it has been a sacred medicine in Europe for more than 2,000 years. Ancient Roman physicians and folk healers regarded it as a secret remedy for chronic cough, bronchitis, and lung disease. Just a small garden patch was enough to supply healing medicine for an entire family for decades. This plant tolerates deep cold lives beneath snow, disappears in winter, then returns thicker and stronger every spring. But there is one major problem: no one can monopolize it. The pharmaceutical industry cannot patent it. The supplement industry cannot control its supply. So they promote turmeric, something that must be grown in greenhouses carefully maintained in most parts of the world, while deliberately burying this cold, hardy European turmeric, a plant that grows almost wild and requires little effort. But today, most modern herbal schools rarely teach you how to grow it yourself at home. Let me show you what alecampane actually does. Let us rewind to ancient Europe, where alecampane was considered a sacred medicine. Its scientific name, Inula Helenium, is itself a tribute to Helen of Troy, the legendary beauty who launched 1,000 ships. According to legend, when Helen was taken from Sparta, her tears fell to the ground and grew into the bright yellow flowers of alecampane. While symbolic rather than historical, this story reflects the special status of alecampane in ancient culture. Greek and Roman physicians revered it as a panacea. Pliny the Elder, the great Roman naturalist, advised, "Let no day pass without eating some alecampane root to aid digestion, dispel melancholy, and bring joy." Hippocrates used it to stimulate the kidneys, brain, uterus, and stomach. Dioscorides and Galen recorded that the root could treat conditions ranging from sciatica to chronic respiratory problems. In medieval and Renaissance Europe, alecampane was the foremost lung medicine. It was used to treat chronic cough, bronchitis, asthma, whooping, cough pleurisy, even pulmonary tuberculosis, diseases that killed millions during freezing winters. Before the advent of antibiotics, alecampane was the first-line remedy for all lung infections, helping to loosen mucus, fight bacteria, and deeply cleanse the respiratory tract. On a cold autumn in Europe around the 17th century, when frost began to blanket the fields, and winter was very near, a village healer bent down in the woodland behind a small monastery. He was not looking for mushrooms, not looking for turnips. He was looking for alecampane. The large leaves had begun to yellow, the sign of the right moment. He dug gently, carefully, revealing thick yellow-brown roots with a distinctive, bitter, pungent scent. This was what he needed for the coming winter, when persistent coughs, pneumonia, chest tightness, and respiratory illnesses would return with the cold. The roots were brought back washed clean, sliced thin, and dried in the kitchen loft. Some were decocted into a bitter but warming drink. Some were cooked with honey into cough syrup. When children in the village coughed so hard they could not sleep, when the elderly breathed heavily after cold nights, they did not go looking for medicine to buy anywhere. They came here. And alecampane was the first thing used. That clump never died. Each year it grew larger, spreading wider beneath the oak trees. He did not need to replant, only harvest carefully, and the alecampane clump would continue to heal the children, the village forever. That was free medicine, eternal, something no one could sell or control. But you have never heard about alecampane like this, because if people knew how to grow it in their backyard, the supplement industry would collapse, a market worth hundreds of millions of dollars built on expensive tropical turmeric that is difficult to grow in cold regions. Let me show you what alecampane really is. This is a woodland perennial, cold hardy, down to minus 40 degrees Celsius. When winter arrives and snow covers everything, the above-ground stems and leaves disappear completely. But underground, the root system remains alive. And when spring returns, it comes back thicker, stronger. A mature plant, after 2 to 3 years, produces large, fleshy, and branching fresh roots, many pounds of root per plant, enough for a single clump to supply medicine for an entire family throughout the year. After drying, you have ounces of high-value medicinal powder, and the plant regenerates. Harvest carefully. Take the outer roots, leave the central crown, and it will grow back even larger the following year. Plant once, harvest for 20 to 50 years or more. Turmeric is different. It is a tropical plant. Below 10 degrees Celsius, it dies. In most cold climates, turmeric cannot survive outdoors. It must be grown in pots in greenhouses, moved in and out with the seasons. A single unexpected cold snap is enough to wipe out an entire crop. It requires 9 months of ideal conditions to produce about 3 pounds, 1.3 kilograms of fresh root, which dries down to only a few ounces. Finally comes pharmacological strength, and this is where elecampane truly shines. Elecampane root contains allantolactone and isolantolactone compounds with strong antibacterial and antifungal effects documented to be active against multiple respiratory pathogens, including in conditions where the body is weakened by cold and damp. At the same time, these compounds also show clear anti-inflammatory effects associated with modulation of inflammatory markers such as IL-8 TNF-alpha and IL-1 beta, helping to reduce inflammation directly at the airway mucosa, where inflammation and infection often persist. But the key distinguishing feature of elecampane lies in its expectorant and bronchodilatory action. It thins, mucus supports the expulsion of phlegm, helps clear the airways, and makes breathing easier. Turmeric with curcumin is excellent for systemic anti-inflammatory effects, joint pain, and chronic inflammation. But in respiratory conditions where strong expectoration and localized antibacterial action in the lungs are needed, elecampane often rivals or exceeds it, especially in cold, damp climates. In addition to antibacterial compounds, elecampane also contains large amounts of inulin, a prebiotic fiber that was critically important before modern diets disrupted the gut microbiome. Elecampane survives where turmeric cannot even survive: cold climates, shaded areas, damp forests, places where turmeric dies immediately. Elecampane instead thrives like a weed. No fertilizer required, no pesticides needed, self-protective. Due to bitter compounds, even deer avoid eating it because of its strong camphor-like taste. In the early 20th century, elecampane had not disappeared at all. It still appeared in herbal texts and was still mentioned as a familiar lung remedy, but at the same time, something else began reshaping modern medicine entirely: systems of control, standardization, and profit. As medical regulations and advertising laws tightened, every claim of therapeutic effect had to be proven by large, expensive studies. And here elecampane encountered a fatal problem. No one could patent a root that grows in a garden. No patent meant no exclusivity. No exclusivity meant no incentive to spend millions of dollars on large-scale trials. No trials meant no permission to promote it. And so elecampane was gradually pushed out of the mainstream. During that same period, synthetic antibiotics emerged, penicillin, sulfa drugs, and then a wave of new medications that could be mass-produced, dosage standardized, packaged, advertised, and sold for consistent profit. Modern medicine quickly chose the path that was easier to control. Anything that could not be standardized was labeled folk medicine, outdated or lacking scientific basis, even when it had worked effectively for hundreds of years. The supplement industry followed a similar path. Turmeric became the new star: easy to dry, easy to grind into powder, easy to encapsulate, easy to build a global marketing narrative around. Meanwhile, elecampane, a perennial plant with large roots, slow growth, and poor compatibility with industrial processing, was ignored. And then one final step completed the process of burial: it was no longer widely taught. Modern herbal schools rarely instruct people on how to grow elecampane at home. The message is never stated outright, but it is very clear: do not grow it yourself, buy it in capsules, in powder form, in extracts. When people no longer know how to grow something, they are forced to buy it. From that point on, elecampane disappeared from modern medical textbooks. It survived only in traditional herbalism, in the fragmented memory of those who still cultivated it and passed the knowledge quietly from one person to another, outside the system where profit cannot reach. Elecampane is so easy to grow that you plant it once and then forget about it. It grows well from zone 3 to zone 8. It does not require intense sunlight. In fact, shade or partial sun is ideal, about 80% shade right beneath large tree canopies. The soil does not need to be special. It simply needs to be rich in organic matter, moist and well-drained, exactly the kind of natural woodland soil that many gardens already have. You can start it from seeds sown in fall, so winter cold triggers germination, or by dividing roots from a mature plant. You plant it and then leave it alone. It lives on its own, spreads on its own, and produces medicinal roots year after year. For the first 2 years, you harvest nothing at all. That is the hardest part for humans waiting. From the third year onward, once the plant is established, you harvest the outer roots in autumn after the first frost, when the roots reach peak quality and aromatic compound levels are highest. Dig the outer roots carefully, leaving the central crown with its buds intact. Do this correctly and the plant will return the following year even larger. Repeat this cycle year after year. The roots are washed clean, sliced thin, dried, then ground into powder. The powder has a strong, bitter taste that is the sign that allantoilactone remains intact. Store it in an airtight jar and use as needed. No need to replant every year. One clump expands naturally, quietly, persistently. Plant once harvest for 20 to 50 years. They hate this because if you grow elecampane in your backyard, you will never buy expensive cough syrups or respiratory supplements again. That is the problem. Supplements made from elecampane in the form of dried root powder or tincture are often expensive. A 2-ounce bottle of tincture costs around $16 to $28, or dried root retails for about $1.75 to $4.75 per ounce. That is the price paid by individual buyers purchasing again and again, each cough season, each cold season. Now look at homegrown elecampane. One mature elecampane plant, after 2 to 3 years, can yield 2 to 4 pounds of fresh root when harvested carefully. After cleaning and drying, that amount becomes roughly 6 to 12 ounces of dried root. If you convert that dried root into retail herbal prices, each mature elecampane plant represents approximately $50 to $150 in product value per harvest. And the plant does not die. It continues to live, continues to grow, and continues to produce roots for 20 to 50 years. Your initial investment is only a root cutting or a packet of seeds, usually under $10, with almost no ongoing maintenance cost. Let me tell you what happened when I planted elecampane 5 years ago. I bought a few root divisions from a reputable source. I planted them under tree shade behind the garden, planting the roots 2 to 3 inches deep, spaced 12 to 18 inches apart. I watered a few times at the beginning to help the plants establish, then left them alone, never touching them again. The first 2 years, the plants grew slowly, forming large leaves. In the third year, they matured. In the fourth year, I harvested carefully from a few plants, taking the outer roots and leaving the center intact. This year, the fifth year, the clump has spread into several plants, yielding more ounces of dried powder. The patch now has new plants spreading on their own. Next year, I will harvest at least twice as much. Making cough syrup from elecampane is actually very simple. No complicated recipe is needed. Elecampane roots, after being dug up, are washed clean and sliced thin while fresh or after being lightly dried. These root slices are placed in a pot covered with water and simmered gently for many hours. Not boiled hard, just gently simmered. Let the compounds slowly extract. The liquid gradually turns dark brown and a warm, pungent aroma fills the kitchen. When the liquid is reduced to about half, strain out the root material, pressing firmly to extract all the essence. Let it cool until warm, not too hot, to preserve the enzymes in honey, then mix thoroughly with honey. Stir until fully combined. Not to sweeten, but to preserve, and to carry the medicine deeper into the lungs. The ratio does not need to be strict. Just thick enough that when it cools, it becomes a viscous, warming, very bitter syrup. I use it in place of cough syrup, taking small spoonfuls when the throat begins to burn, the chest feels heavy and mucus builds up. After a few doses, the mucus begins to thin. The cough shifts from dry and painful to wet and more comfortable. Breathing becomes deeper. The chest feels lighter. I no longer need to go to the pharmacy every time the weather changes. That alone has saved hundreds of dollars over the years, and more importantly, I am no longer dependent on having to buy something to deal with the same recurring problems. You should also note elecampane is very strong, so start with a small dose to test for allergies. Do not use if pregnant. When medicine no longer lives in bottles but grows from the soil behind your house, the entire system built on dependency begins to shake. Medical self-sufficiency from perennial medicinal plants in the garden is something neither the pharmaceutical industry nor the supplement industry can control. This is your action plan. Find root divisions or seeds from native plant nurseries or herbal networks. Plant them under large trees in humus-rich soil. Mark the location and leave the plant alone for 3 to 4 years. After that, harvest the outer roots in autumn, leaving the central portion so the plant can continue living. From a shaded corner of your garden, you will have a nearly permanent source of lung medicine. Elecampane stronger than tropical remedies that depend on supply chains, and more importantly, producing medicine indefinitely from a single clump that requires no control. If everyone could grow it, the dependency system would collapse. And that is why no one actively teaches you this. If this story made you see herbs and health differently, subscribe to continue exploring medicinal plants that have been buried. And leave a comment, have you ever grown elecampane, or do you think I am exaggerating its power?